commercial-free Catholic charismatic channel.
He's strengthening the faith of so many people.
To promote the gift of church teaching, dedicated for the new evangelization.
God's blessings on your work. May God bless and prosper you.
Shalom World, God's own channel.
I'm a member of the Society of Jesus, commonly known as the Jesuits. We were founded by St. Ignatius Loyola, who lived from 1491 to 1556. He was a Spaniard, a section of Spain called the Basques. And he came from a military family. And he wrote in his autobiography that up to the age of 26, he excelled in three things, and they weren't virtues: womanizing, gambling, and dueling. Those were the three things that St. Ignatius was really good at. But when both of his legs were broken in a military battle, he experienced in the 9 months of his convalescence a profound spiritual conversion. And he set off on a pilgrimage to the Black Madonna of Spain, Our Lady of Montserrat. That would set the tone for the rest of his life. He would later journey over to the Holy Land, and he made other pilgrimages, but he wrote in his biography referring to himself as the Pilgrim. Pilgrimage is a seminal Christian image for us of what our life is all about. We come from God and we journey back to God. A pilgrimage is like a microcosm of our lives. We set aside a particular period of time, whether it's a week or 3 months, however long it is, to go to a holy site, to pray, to fast, sometimes by ourselves, sometimes with companions, to go to this holy site to experience a deeper intimacy with Jesus. St. Ignatius, as I said, experienced great power and spiritual conversion in the midst of his pilgrimages, and he saw his life as a pilgrimage. So when he and the early companions of the Society of Jesus founded the religious order, today known as the Jesuits, he wrote that Jesuit novices, those who were learning to become Jesuits, would do well to set out on a pilgrimage. Now that tradition, prior to the Second Vatican Council, had fallen into disuse. But I entered the Jesuits way back in 1968, and the Vatican Council had called us back to the roots of our religious order. And I read in the writings of St. Ignatius that novices should consider going on a pilgrimage. So I went to my novice master, the one who was in charge of my spiritual formation, and I said, "Look at this. St. Ignatius said we should go on a pilgrimage. Can I go on a pilgrimage?" And the novice master said, "Well, Michael, where would you like to go?" And I really didn't know, but I prayed about it, thought about it, did a little bit of reading, and I discovered that the most popular pilgrimage site in the world, bar none, is Our Lady Guadalupe down in Mexico City. Our Lady Guadalupe is the patroness of the Americas. So I went to my novice master and I got permission. I started out with, I think, $20 in my pocket, and I had 6 weeks to travel down to Our Lady of Guadalupe and travel back. I hitchhiked along the way. I stayed in Skid Row flop houses. I stayed in homeless shelters along the way. Sometimes when I was in a city for a day or two, I would become a day laborer and earn enough money to be able to buy my daily bread. I had a little knapsack, and I mostly lived on peanut butter and jelly for those 6 weeks. And it was a life-changing experience for me. I want to tell you a little bit more about my relationship to Our Lady Guadalupe and how significant she's been in my life. A little sidebar before I jump into the details. For those of you that may not be familiar with Our Lady Guadalupe, there's an image in the background there. In 1531, December 9th and 12th, Our Lady appeared to an Aztec peasant by the name of Juan Diego, and she asked that a great shrine be built on this site, which was right near to a site where the Aztec goddess Quetzalcoatl had demanded human sacrifice. Our Lady would ask that a shrine would be dedicated in her honor of she who brought her son into the world, that he would bring and give his life to us that we might experience eternal life. After that experience of Our Lady appearing to Juan Diego and a miraculous image appearing on Juan Diego's tilma, or his cloak, millions of pilgrims have streamed to the shrine every year since. And what was the most profound conversion experience connected to the apparition is that it was the largest mass conversion of native peoples to Christianity since the end of the apostolic era. That's the power of this shrine of Our Lady Guadalupe. So I made my way down to the shrine, and I prayed at the shrine and experienced God's love and the tenderness and compassion of Our Lady's care in an extraordinary way. But I think the highlight of the pilgrimage for me was not actually at the shrine, but as I was coming back. I was in the city of Guadalajara, and I was relaxing, I'll be honest. I was sitting in the plaza of the mariachis, and I think I only had $1 in my pocket at the time. So I bought one soda, and I was nursing that for about an hour and a half, just slowly enjoying my soda. And the maitre d' came over and he said, "Now look, buddy, you've only bought one soda here, and you've been here for an hour and a half. You're gonna have to move on because we need to give your seat to somebody else." Well, the band leader, the head of the mariachi, had been making eye contact with me, and I had appreciated his music. So he saw the hubbub with the maitre d' trying to scoot me away, and he came over and he said, "What's the problem?" Now, my Spanish is un poquito, muy poquito, very, very minimal. But I explained, "Yo soy un peregrino a Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe." I am a pilgrim to Our Lady of Guadalupe. And he said, "Ah, Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe, mi casa es su casa. Mi casa es tu casa. My house is your house." And so he brushed the maitre d' along, and he forked over some money, and he said, "Get whatever you want to drink." So I sat there enjoying his music, and then at the end of the time, he said, "Where are you staying?" And I said, "Well, I don't have any place to stay." And he said, "You stay at my house." Well, he had a gentle smile and trusting eyes, so I trusted him. And I went to his house, and this was about 1 o'clock in the morning now by the time we got to his house. And he woke up his wife, and he said, "This is my friend from Estados Unidos, from the United States. Mi casa es su casa. He's going to stay with us tonight." Now, he had one little boy, and he had his wife, and then he had one light bulb in his house. And he took me into the antechamber of his house, and he unscrewed the light bulb, and then he moved into the second room, and he screwed in the light bulb, and then his wife and his son and I came to the second room, and then he unscrewed the light bulb, and then he moved into the bedroom. And there was one bedroom, and he screwed the light bulb there, and he pointed to his bed, and he said, "This is where you will sleep." Now, I'd just been through his entire house, and there were dirt floors, and there's only one bed. So I said, "Well, where will you and your wife sleep?" He said, "We'll sleep in the next room on the floor with our son." And I said, No, you can't." And then, I'll never forget this, he walked over and he pointed to a picture of Our Lady Guadalupe. And he said, "My mother is your mother." And he pointed to a picture of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and he said, "My God is your God. My house is your house." I slept in his bed that night. We woke up that morning to the sound of his wife preparing huevos and frijoles, eggs and beans and tortillas. And then we had a delicious breakfast. And then he walked me to the bus stop and he paid my fare back to the border of the United States. Because I was just going to hitchhike. I didn't have enough money to pay the bus fare, and he paid my way. And I realized at that point that I didn't even know his name. And I said, what is your name? And he said, Gabriel. I said, Gabriel, like the angel. You've been an angel to me. And I reached into my knapsack and I gave him the only thing that I could give him, which was my flashlight with extra batteries, so that I couldn't buy him another light bulb, but I could at least give him my flashlight with some extra batteries. That was the highlight of my visit to Our Lady of Guadalupe. It was meeting this extraordinarily poor man who showed me more generosity, perhaps than anyone else in my entire life. Reminds me of that parable of the widow. The Pharisees and the wealthy people were giving lots of money, but the widow gave from the little she had. That was what he did. He opened his heart and his home to me, and he shared with what he had. He shared what he had with me. I think that's the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe. That's the power of visiting her. This is a detail painting on Our Lady of Guadalupe. They've done wonderful studies on the painting, and if you magnify the eyes of Our Lady of Guadalupe several hundred times, what you can see in the eyes of Our Lady of Guadalupe is a picture of Juan Diego. You can't even see that with your naked eye, but if you magnify Our Lady's eyes several hundred times, you see him inside her eyes. I like to think that each of us is inside the loving gaze of our mother. She wraps her mantle of grace around us. She looks at us with compassion, and she calls all of us her children. Right now, we're experiencing in the United States a crisis over refugees. We don't want people who don't look like us, who aren't born in this country. We're very particular about who's coming into the country. I think Our Lady of Guadalupe, who is the patroness of all of the Americas, the United States, Mexico, Central America, all of South America, Our Lady calls us to balance national security with extraordinary compassion for those in need. And the power of that first pilgrimage that I made to Our Lady of Guadalupe was the experience of her wrapping her mantle of grace around me. I didn't have any money. I was relying on the kindness of others to take me in, and my own good wits along the way. And it was an extraordinary experience of trusting in God's providence. I came back another time, and I was with a therapist and a group of pilgrims. The therapist was doing some psychological counseling. I was there as the spiritual leader, and we did therapy and prayer. And we went specifically to Our Lady of Guadalupe to bring our hurts and our wounds to her and ask Our Lady to touch those deep places of woundedness within our own hearts. Devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe is one of the best therapies I know. Mary comes and she wraps her mantle of grace around us. She opens her heart and she says, I am truly your mother. Because do you remember when Jesus was hanging on the cross, he looks down and he sees the beloved disciple John, and he sees his mother Mary, and he says, son, this is your mother. And then he says, mother, this is your son. The traditional interpretation of that text from John's Gospel is that Jesus is giving us his mother and giving his mother to us. Because in that Gospel, John is not called John, he's called the beloved disciple. That beloved disciple is every one of us. Jesus gives us his mother. to love, to cherish, to come to understand more fully that every one of us are brothers and sisters, black, white, yellow, red, and brown. If we have one mother and one God, our Father in heaven, that makes us all brothers and sisters. There's one last time that I want to tell you about another trip that I made down to Our Lady Guadalupe. And this time I came with my dear friend, Father John Ferroni, and we took a pilgrim group of young adults down there. And we did some service at the shrine and in parishes. And then we did lots and lots of prayer. But one night when we were staying in a hotel room in the midst of the pilgrimage, my roommate, Father John, is a terrible snorer. Now, I'm not breaking any secrets because he names this very freely about himself. So I was, we're sharing a room and I'm trying to get to sleep and he's going, he's just sawing logs and I can't get, and I try and put the pillow over my ear and I didn't have any ear plugs, I couldn't get to sleep. So suddenly I just shout out, John, John! And he goes, and he stops snoring and I'm able to go back to sleep. But another hour, he's going, and I go, John, John! And he wakes up and he stops snoring. Another hour later, I said, John! And he wakes up, and then it was quiet for the rest of the night. Well, the next morning, he turned to me and he said, Michael, I had the strangest experience last night. I was sound asleep, and I heard someone call my name, John. And I woke up and I looked over at you and you were sound asleep. Well, I thought it was just my imagination, so I went back to sleep. But an hour later, I heard someone call my name. It woke me up. I looked over, you were sound asleep. So I went back to bed. But a third time, somebody called my name. And here we are in the midst of this powerful pilgrimage. And I knew that somehow the Lord was speaking to me, just like he was calling the prophet Samuel in the middle of the night. So I said, Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. And I didn't hear anything, but I felt the presence of the Lord filling my heart. And I said to him, John, I've no doubt that the Lord was filling the presence of your heart with his love. But you were snoring last night, and that call in the middle of the night was me waking you up because I couldn't get to sleep. Whenever we have the feast of Our Lady Guadalupe or that reading from the book of Samuel comes up, Father John and I text each other, we call one another, we remind each other of that story. Because the Lord uses very human means, doesn't he? Very human means to draw us closer to one another and closer to himself. Even our shortcomings, like snoring in the night or not being able to get a good night's sleep. Going to Our Lady Guadalupe is not just about praying rosaries. It's not just about celebrating Mass. It's about opening our eyes and seeing the people around us as our brothers and sisters. It's understanding that all of the experiences of our life in our waking hours and even in our sleeping hours are opportunities for the Lord to draw us closer to himself under the mantle of Our Lady's grace. Amen.
Someone who's used media a lot in evangelization, so I believe in the importance of Catholic radio, Catholic TV, Catholics using the new media. Can I encourage everyone to watch Shalom TV? I think it's a great vehicle of evangelization. And God bless all of you.
Shalom World, God's own channel.